most predictable things about my art is that I use basically the same palette over and over. If it's for a landscape, a floral, or still life, or a seascape, it doesn't seem to matter. I have those favorites on my palette most of the time. But I decided today that I was going to bust out of my rut and try something new. This beautiful, serene landscape came about by using one predominant color, cerulean blue. To that, I added a very limited palette and was able to get great color harmony and a beautiful, soft, rich landscape. Stick around and I'll show you how I did it. I started this painting just using three colors, cerulean blue, cad yellow medium, and titanium white. With those three, I was able to do the sky and the mountains and the hills, and I'm going to add a couple of other colors later on, but basically this painting was done with those three colors. I don't remember what artist gave this advice, but years ago I heard him talking about having a Z, like zebra, in your painting will help lead the eye. And I've done several paintings with a Z and really liked it, so I started out with that basic design. I think one of the reasons this painting looks so luscious is because the sky is so light next to the mountains. And so I really encourage you. I tend to put in pretty strong skies, but I love the softness of the sky. I used a ton of white and the tiniest touch of cerulean blue. I got it slightly darker at the horizon, and then I scrubbed in just a little pure white at the top for clouds. It was very subtle, but I thought it worked really well. For the first mountain that's in the farthest back part of the painting, I just used cerulean blue and white. I just obviously used more blue than I did in the sky, and very simple, simple lines. For the next mountain coming towards us, I took the same cerulean blue and white and I've added just a touch of cad yellow medium, and you see how it's shifted it more to a blue green. And I like to have lots of layers of color on things. I don't like anything to be a solid color if possible. And a lot of times I will pre-mix my colors and I'll have a lot of different values. But for this particular painting, I just mix things on the canvas. Like I would use a cerulean blue with a little bit of yellow in it, and then where I wanted to place a little greener, I'd add just a touch of more yellow on the canvas, just scrub it in. Then I put a little more cerulean blue right on the canvas and scrub it in. Then, and this is such a great trick, if you want the mountain to look like it's closer to you, it just adds to that depth perception. Put just the tiniest bit of texture at the top of that mountain and within the mountain. And you can use just a little flat brush, just doing a little vertical motion here and there, try to make it irregular. And it gives this great sense of depth, particularly with the smoother mountain in the back. It makes it look like that's really farther back in the painting. So easy to do. For the next big hill, I'm using our same color combination. I'm just adding a little bit more of the cad yellow to shift it even more to a green. And I'm using an angled 1-inch brush with a fine chisel tip. And I really love the effect that I got on this hill as I was adding in a little blue here, a little more white, a little more yellow. I'm putting it right on the canvas, and you can see some of those sharp lines that came from that angled brush, and it almost looked like a watercolor. I just love, now isn't that better and more interesting than one solid color? I just love this mixture of color, makes my heart jump. You'll notice I put some blue, like blue or more like in the sky in there as well. Just a great combination. The next color I'm going to introduce to our painting is raw sienna, and I realize on this photograph it looks more like burnt sienna. It looks reddish, but it wasn't. It was raw sienna, which is more of a soft khaki color. And here's this wedge that was in between the two hills, and I wanted it to be a field, but you can see what's wrong with it. It looks like a mountain. It doesn't look like it's laying flat. It looks like it's something that's tall. So one of the things that I did to fix that perception is I decided to bring the mountain behind it lower down and reduce the size of that. So I filled that in, and then I went back and changed put in some brush marks that showed the angle to give the illusion that that field was moving back and not going straight up and down. And I did the same method with the field that I did with the mountains. I took raw sienna. I also might have used a little yellow oxide at that point. I used white, and I just scrubbed different colors in to get it to look like real dirt. I might have used just the slightest bit of burnt umber there as well. Here I'm using a tiny little flat brush, and I am putting in the smallest little, just simple marks at the edge of that field just to look like trees in the distance. And I always put my trees in very small to start with, just to make sure the scale looks right. And if they need to be bigger, you can always go back and make them bigger. And I did introduce some sap green to our palette at that point. Here I'm adding some larger trees. You can see our tiny trees in the background next to that brown field. And now the tree line that's closer to us, of course, the trees are going to be larger. I'm using that same sap green as the base and adding a tiny touch of yellow to that green for the tops. I decided it would be great color harmony to do another field using that same raw sienna, and I scrubbed in some different colors. And after all of that, I decided I didn't like it. It just looked like a muddy mess to me. It didn't look like an actual field that you would farm in. So I ended up painting over it, as I so often do with my paintings. I get back, and if something isn't working, I redo it. So I ended up making that section of the painting green, which I'll show you. Here I've added one more big hill to the very front of the painting. You can see where that front brown field, I've made it green, and I've added in some trees. Well, as I so often do, I have gotten near the end of this painting and I've been taking a look at it, and I'm going to make a big change. I absolutely love, love, love the sky. I love those mountains. I love that subtle tree line. I love that field in the back. I really love this hill. It almost looks like watercolors, the way those colors went down. I'm pretty happy with this hill, but what I don't like is this hill in front. I've worked with it and worked with it, and it feels so abrupt, like it's stopping the painting even though it's subtle. So I think that I am going to try taking this top out, and I'm going to let this field and this field extend down and see if I can put that back in, and then either not have this hill or have something much smaller. So, looks like a lot of work, doesn't it? We'll see. Stay tuned. One of the things that I had to do as I was extending that field, I had some trees that I had to take out. And sometimes it's just easier to take titanium white and block something out and then go over it again with your color, rather than trying to just go over and over with a lighter color. So that's what that whited out place is. Here you can see the back field extended, and I'm extending that front field as well. Just feels like I can breathe. That opened up. And so I've decided I'm going to put another field in, but it's going to look very flat. And here you see me just putting those colors right on the canvas, and then I'm scrubbing them in. There I am using a soft brush, going back over that with some soft white, just again scrubbing that in. And I decided that it wasn't enough, so I decided just to take that whole front corner of the painting and turn it into a field. You'll notice my brush marks are going straight in the center, but as you move farther out, they're going at an angle, giving that perception that the field is moving back. Here I'm using a small brush just to slightly dab in the illusion of some type of vegetation coming up out of that field, using the same cerulean blue and cad yellow. It's just a bluish green, barely touching that to the canvas. And one of the mistakes that I made when I first started doing this is, you see how those lines are just straight up and down? They're not at an angle. So things need, in a field, they need to be wider at the front of the canvas and get smaller, closer together at the back of the canvas. So I had to redo those lines a little bit And here you can see me where I'm gotten back on track, and the lines are getting closer together at the back of the painting, farther apart at the front. You'll also notice I've taken just a little bit of burnt umber and I've dropped in a little shadow line at the base of those trees. It's funny how just such a simple little thing can make such a difference. It was so refreshing working on this painting using a different color palette. I feel like I've been on a painting vacation. So I encourage you, if you're like me and you tend to have the same colors on your palette, try to experiment with some different colors. Try the cerulean blue, try some other things and see what a different look you can get. I've enjoyed you coming along on this journey with me. It's never boring. I always seem to have things that I change and tweak, but that's just kind of my process and how I roll. I hope if you would like to find out more about me or see some real time painting tutorials and courses, I have some very inexpensively priced things on my website at victoriahagemanart.com. And I do hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel so you'll make sure you don't miss any of the cool free stuff that comes out frequently. Thanks so much, and God bless.